Dr. Frank Turek, author of I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. He has his doctorate from Southern Evangelical Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, in apologetics. Well, Dr. Turek apparently does have enough faith to become an atheist because he has become an atheist. And I'll get to exactly how that happened and how I can make that claim, but I want to show you what leads up to that remarkable event. It all started in 2008 with the release of Ben Stein's Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. In this movie, this creationist movie, there's a particular interview with Richard Dawkins. I'm going to play that piece of that interview that has led to an awful lot of misunderstanding, lies, and distortion on the part of a lot of religious people, because this is where it all gets started.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, and how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. Well, but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
That little bit of interview led to numerous religious individuals claiming that Richard Dawkins believed that we were created by space aliens. Richard Dawkins believes that space aliens created us. This particular one says, Richard Dawkins, the atheist, says that scientific evidence shows intelligent design. Despite his learning and his pretensions to the intellectual sophistication, Richard Dawkins is actually a wicked fool. See Psalm 52:1. In one simple 5-minute interview, his arguments against the existence of God, the intelligent designer, crumble as he contradicts himself. Good grief, what could possibly be worse than a bunch of crazy Christians? Oh, actually, a bunch of crazy Muslims. This one says, Richard Dawkins was urged to admit the irrationality of his claims of chance and realized that Darwinism is in a great dilemma. Unable to resolve these issues and find a way out, he had to admit that all beings were created. However, because he found it difficult to withdraw all his claims all of a sudden, he considers aliens as deities. Surely Allah is beyond that. Surely even this is enough to see that Dawkins had to abandon his claims of chance and is no longer a Darwinist. Now it remains for Dawkins to answer the following question. Who created the aliens? Did these people even listen to what he actually said? Well, I'll give this guy credit. He does accurately quote Dawkins, but then watch what he does.
And this is when someone asked him, if intelligent design, which I don't believe in intelligent design, I believe in Jesus Christ design. Okay. But, could intelligent design be an option? Isn't it possible that it could be created or designed? This was asked unto Richard Dawkins. Here's what he said. Well, it could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, this is again one of the most famous, well-respected physicists in the world, it could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed the form of life that's seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now that is a possibility. That's an intriguing possibility, and I suppose that it is possible that you might find evidence for that. If you look at the details of biochemistry and molecular biology, you might find a signature of some sort of designer, and that designer could be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. But that higher intelligence itself would have had to come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point. Well, I agree, Richard Dawkins, that things don't just jump into existence spontaneously. I don't believe that either.
Does this guy really not understand the difference between the Big Bang or an intelligent civilization coming into existence all at once?
He is saying here, and this is the guy who says that if you believe in God, you're mentally ill. You're deluded. And he says God does not exist. But it's possible that aliens created our world.
At least this guy got this part right. He said it was possible. He didn't say they did.
That's what he's saying. I mean, did you hear him? He said this other civilization somewhere else in the universe. So the most highly respected physicist says, I believe that maybe life on Earth was designed by anyone except God. It just couldn't have been this God because he said that we should kill homosexuals. And the God of the Old Testament is homophobic. And therefore we know that it was aliens.
I learned a long time ago when they pound the pulpit, they're gonna start lying. And sure enough, even though in his own words he's quoting Richard Dawkins correctly, he starts changing it from "we think it's possible that aliens did this" to saying "we know."
Okay? I mean, this is garbage. He literally is saying it could have been done by aliens. That's really interesting, but there's no way it was the God of the Bible. Can't happen. I mean, do you see the hypocrisy? You telling me that that is a scientist that's being honest? Or that he has an agenda of saying any option, anything except that God created it. I'll believe anything.
Well, this brings us up to the Broadmoor Baptist Church of Shreveport, Louisiana. I was raised a Baptist, a Southern Baptist, and Broadmoor is the Southern Baptist Church. And I was in the Southern Baptist Convention for the first quarter century of my life. And it never ceases to amaze me. I'm used to hearing a lot of bullshit from the podium of Southern Baptist churches. In fact, within the confines of this map around Shreveport, Louisiana, I have two relatives who have been the pastors of at least 4 churches in this immediate area. So I'm used to hearing bullshit coming from Southern Baptist churches around Shreveport, Louisiana. And while it never surprises me, it never ceases to amaze me. So there at Broadmoor, April the 18th, 2013, 5 years to the day since Expelled was released, Frank Turek and David Silverman are debating. Watch what happens.
You get me the reference. Richard Dawkins is saying that aliens brought life here because he knew.
He did not say that.
Yes, he did. See the movie Expelled.
You're telling another falsehood, and I'm really getting tired of it.
See the movie Expelled.
You know, it's against your commandments to lie.
It's on It's on video, David.
It's a sin. It's an objective sin.
By
Okay,
the way,
we're moving
it's
on.
on video.
So there he goes. I don't know why someone with a doctorate in apologetics finds it necessary to lie to make a point. He's a professional public speaker, and I've heard that he's a master debater. I think that's what they said. This is particularly interesting given that throughout the debate he kept making the point that Christians have a objective moral standard handed down from God instead of the touchy-feely subjective moral standard that an atheist would have. Didn't keep him from lying. You know, religious people hold imaginary interviews all the time. They call it praying, or they say, God laid this on my heart, or I'm discerning the spirits, or the Spirit led me to do this or that. And then they go out and tell everybody what God told them, even though they just made it up in their own head. So I'm going to do pretty much the same thing here, except instead of holding an imaginary interview with an imaginary God, I'm going to hold an imaginary interview with a real person, Frank Turek. Okay, Mr. Turek, before you go into a debate, do you have an open mind? Do you think that it's possible to change your mind on something? I mean, could people show you evidence and you would change your mind based upon that evidence? Mr. Turek responds, why, certainly, I'm open-minded. I'm not closed-minded. Okay, Mr. Turek, did you get to be a Christian by just picking a religion out of a hat, you know, reach in, pull a lot of names out and say, oh, Mohammed or Vishnu, or did you become a Christian that way, just, oh, you happened to pull Jesus out of a hat? Well, no, of course not. I got to be a Christian by following the evidence, and I became a Christian by looking at the facts, and I followed the evidence there. Okay, so if the evidence had led you somewhere else, and the evidence showed you that Muhammad was the true prophet and Allah was the true God, you would have gone there, right? Why, certainly, but of course I'm a Christian because the evidence did not lead me there. Okay, and if all the evidence said there is no God, you're honest enough to follow the evidence wherever it leads you, aren't you? Well, certainly, but of course the evidence shows that Jehovah God, Yahweh, he's the real God, the God of the Jews and the Christians, and I'm only following the evidence. Okay, but Dr. Turek, isn't it possible that if someone showed you the evidence, you're not closed-minded? I mean, you would follow the evidence wherever it leads. Well, yes, certainly, of course I would. That's how I got to be a Christian, and that's what the evidence shows. Okay, Dr. Turek, so you're saying it's possible that the evidence would lead you to become a Muslim, or a Hindu, or an atheist. Well, yes, but that's not really what I believe. I'm just saying that, you know, it's possible I could be led that way. Okay, so Dr. Turek, since you said it's possible, I'm going to go around telling everyone that you have become an atheist. After all, there's no difference between saying it's possible that aliens created life on Earth and saying aliens did create life on Earth. There's no difference between saying it's possible that I could become an atheist and saying I have become an atheist. Do you see a difference there, Dr. Turek?